I want to talk a little bit about the Trump campaign to destroy democracy, what the Orange Vomit and his stable of filthy lawyers. You know, if any of these lawyers, starting with that hideous Sidney, whatever the hell her last name is, if any of these lawyers are able to retain their law licenses anywhere in the United States, then the law profession has totally failed in their duty to make sure that their lawyers, being agents of the court, representatives of the court, and sworn to be honest. They don't have to always tell the truth, but they can't always tell lies. If that's not acknowledged by the law professor, and every one of these son of a bitches kicked to the curb who were involved in this, then the law profession has totally dishonored itself. But here's what I'm talking about, and I think Rachel Maddow talked about this last night. A couple of weeks before the 2020 election last November, a team of lawyers that have been sucking around Donald Trump held a news conference at the Republican Party's headquarters in Washington, D.C. This is all according to the New York Times. And at that event, they laid out this bizarre conspiracy theory claiming that a voting machine company had worked with an election software firm along with the financier George Soros and the country of Venezuela to steal the presidential election from the Orange Vomit. Now, you talk about an obscene, insane theory. There it was. But there was a problem for those bastards who were saying this. And this was revealed in court documents released on Monday evening. By the time that news conference occurred, that was on November 19th, the Orange Vomit's campaign had already prepared an internal memo that addressed these bullshit claims about the company Dominion voting systems and the software company that Dominion used, Smartmatic. And that memo had determined that those allegations that they were making at the press conference were all bullshit. There was no fact to that. They were all untrue. And the Trump so-called legal team, this group of law license granted thugs and criminals, knew when they stood out there at this press conference, they knew they were lying through their goddamn teeth. And these court papers that were, what was in them was released on Monday evening. Those court papers, which initially were filed, according to the New York Times, late last week, as a motion in a defamation lawsuit brought against the campaign by others, brought against the campaign and others, the Trump crime family, by a former Dominion employee. His name is Eric Coomer. But those court papers contain evidence that officials in the Trump campaign knew that what they were claiming was bullshit, baseless lies. They knew it from the beginning. Now, the immediate question I have, is this going to make any difference to the scum, the filth, the racist Nazis who still support Trump? I'm talking about the people who vote. I mean, it's a given that the racist lying Nazis around him couldn't care less about any of this stuff. They don't care. They don't live in our world. They live in some corrupted world where they can put this shit out there and expect that everybody's just going to go, oh, yeah, okay, because that's what their base does. But I'm talking about the people who voted for Trump twice, the people who may vote for Trump candidates coming around in 2022, and who may vote for him or whoever he designates as his heir apparent come 2024. I just wonder if the facts, the truth, is going to make any difference to these people. And as I say that, I know that it won't. They're that brain dead. Now, the documents that were released, according to the Times, also show that the campaign retained its findings about Dominion, even as this horrible, horrible creature, Sidney Powell, and other fake lawyers attacked Dominion in the conservative media. and ultimately filed 4 federal lawsuits. Yeah, the Trump monsters filed 4 federal lawsuits accusing Dominion of this vast conspiracy to rig the election against the Orange Vomit. Now, this is right out of the Trump playbook. When you know you're a fucking liar and a deceiver and a con artist and a criminal and a rat bastard, and you know that the truth is against you, then you file lawsuits claiming all kinds of outrageous shit against the people who have the proof that you are a goddamn liar. This is right out of the Trump playbook. This is how they operate. Now, according to emails that were contained in these documents released Monday night, a creep named Zach Parkinson, who was the Orange Vomit's deputy director of communications, Zach reached out to subordinates on November 13, asking them to, quote, substantiate or debunk several matters concerning Dominion. And the next day, according to these emails, Zach received a copy of a memo put together by his staff from what largely appear to be news articles and public fact-checking services. Now, even though the memo was put together very quickly, it rebutted a series of allegations that this corrupt, filthy zombie, Sidney Powell, and others were making in public. The memo found this. Now, keep in mind, this went to Zach Parkinson, the campaign's deputy director of communications. First of all, it found that Dominion did not use voting technology from the software company Smartmatic in the 2020 election. Just did not. Second, it found that Dominion had no direct ties to Venezuela or to George Soros. Poor George Soros, Jesus. And third, the memo said that there was no evidence, none, that Dominion's leadership had any connections to so-called Antifa activists, as the bitch Sidney Powell, the Nazi bitch Sidney Powell, and scum around her kept insisting was true. So every single thing that these bitches and bastards were saying, I'm sorry, I can't help myself. To me, these people don't deserve any kind of respect. I would never call Sidney Powell Miss or Mrs. or whatever her appellation is that she uses. This is the witch bitch, Sidney Powell, who, I don't know, she's the creepiest looking human being, even more so than Donald Trump and his bastard offspring. But I don't know what her objective was other than to destroy the country. So I'm going to call her Ms. or Mrs. or whatever. No, thank you. She is the Nazi bitch to me, period. Now, as the lawyers wrote, Coomer, the Dominion employee, Eric Coomer, who filed this lawsuit, as his lawyers wrote in their motion in the suit they filed against the Trump campaign, a defamation suit, the lawyer said this, quote, the memo produced by the Trump campaign shows that internally the Trump campaign found and knew there was no evidence to support the conspiracy theories regarding Dominion, end quote. Now, that's a very, very serious charge right there that's contained in this in their motion in the defamation suit, Mr. Coomer's defamation suit. It's very serious because it clearly indicates that these lawyers, the lawyers, were party to concocting a total lie, a total fabrication, and then presented it in court as court documents in their lawsuit against Dominion. They knew. Now, as an aside, and you know this as well as I do, you're not supposed to do that. Especially, dear goddess, especially if you're an attorney, if you're an officer of the court. So the Nazi bitch Sidney Powell and her underlings, they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. But they work for Donald Jesus Trump. So they knew also that all they had to do was push this through the courts, get a favorable ruling, and the orange vomit would, pardon them if it came to that. My God, these people. So as the times goes on, even at the time when all this shit was going down, a lot of political observers and voters, Democrats and Republicans alike, just dismissed the efforts by the Nazi bitch, Sidney Powell, and other of these scummy lawyers like the bastard Rudy Giuliani for what it was, a wild last-ditch attempt to appease a sick son of a bitch, Donald Trump, in his denial of his loss. That's what they were trying to do. Well, it's more than that. They were also trying to usurp the presidency of the United States and destroy, totally burn the Constitution. So the false theories that they spread, these scummy so-called lawyers, gained an awful lot of currency in the sewer that is the conservative media in this country, led, of course, by the scum on the Fox sewer. And here we are a year later, and it's still being talked about. It's still being promoted by this filthy conservative media, the sewer media, that should be, I'm sorry, but I'm going to sound like a totalitarian again. These son of a bitches should have their broadcast license taken from them. They are propaganda outlets whose propaganda is designed and targeted to destroying the country. So why in the name of hell are they allowed to continue this shit? This is not what the framers meant, I'm going to guess, when they wrote the First Amendment. But what do I know? Now, the Times, in its never-ending task of remaining neutral, puts this sentence in. Listen to this. It is unclear if Mr. Trump knew about or saw the memo. What? Anybody who works for Trump had to get his permission to go take a dump, much less to put together something like this. But it's the New York Times. Still, these documents suggest that his so-called communications staff were quiet about what it knew, that these claims against Dominion were bullshit at the very moment when they were forcing these lies into conservative media and consequently into the American public. They knew. And listen, I'm not the New York Times, so I'll just go ahead and say it. This orange bastard Donald Trump abso-goddamn-lutely knew. Of course he did. Now, the motion by the attorneys for Mr. Eric Coomer, the former Dominion employee who's filed this defamation suit, the motion his attorneys wrote said, quote, the Trump campaign continued to allow its agents to advance debunked conspiracy theories and defame Mr. Coomer, apparently without providing them with their own research debunking those theories. Well, I mean, if you're going to hold up a bank, you don't walk up to the bank guards and show them your gun before you walk in. I'm not trying to be a smartass there, but I mean, seriously. So, Mr. Coomer, the one whose lawsuit brought this shit out, he was Dominion's one-time director of product strategy and security. Coomer sued the Nazi bitch Sidney Powell, the Nazi bastard Rudy Giuliani, the Trump campaign, and, quote, others, end quote, last year in a state district court in Denver. And he said that after the election, he was wrongly accused by a right-wing podcast host of hacking his company's systems to ensure the Orange Vomit's defeat. And then he went to tell left-wing activists that he had done so. Do you see the extent? I mean, once the big lie is established, and this again goes back to the Hitler playbook, once the big lie is established and enough people have bought it, as has happened in the Christian fascist electorate in this country. Once that is established, then you can embellish the big lie with all kinds of little illegitimate bastard lies running around under the table. You can keep doing it. You can keep lying and lie. In fact, you must keep lying in order to bolster, to give life to the big lie that you're using to destroy your own country. That's what's going on. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.